Supreme Commander Veltar stood before the massive holographic display in his command chamber. His 6 eyes focused on the ancient documents floating in the air. The text glowed with a soft blue light, written in the old galactic script that few beings could read anymore. 3,000 years had passed since the Treaty of Distant Stars was signed, and now the time had come to review what many in the hegemony had forgotten. The treaty was simple in its terms. Humanity would remain within their small solar system, never expanding beyond the red planet they called Mars. In return, the hegemony would leave them alone. It seemed like a fair deal at the time, especially after that brief war that had shocked everyone involved. Veltar remembered the stories his grandfather had told him, how the humans had appeared out of nowhere with ships that moved in ways that broke the known laws of space travel, how they had fought with a fierce determination that made even the bravest hegemony warriors pause. The war had lasted only months, but both sides had decided it was better to make peace than continue fighting. "Commander," called his aide, a young officer named Kethra, "the intelligence reports are ready." Veltar nodded and gestured for the reports to be displayed. What he saw made him pause. Earth, the human homeworld, looked nothing like the military stronghold they had expected. The planet was covered in green fields and small settlements. There were no massive cities, no industrial complexes, no orbital defense platforms. It looked almost primitive. "Are you certain these readings are correct?" Veltar asked. "Yes, Commander. Our long-range sensors show agricultural areas and what appear to be educational facilities. No military installations detected, no space fleets. The humans seem to have regressed. This was unexpected. 3,000 years ago, human technology had been impressive, even frightening. Their ships had moved through space like living things, responding to threats faster than any computer could calculate. Their weapons had cut through hegemony shields as if they were made of paper. Now it seemed they had abandoned all of that for farming. Meanwhile, on Earth, Hyunwoo walked slowly through his rice fields, checking each plant with the care of someone who had done this work for many years. The morning sun cast long shadows across the water, and small fish swam between the green stalks. To anyone watching, he looked like a simple farmer, concerned only with his crops and the weather. His daughter, so young, returned from the nearby university, her backpack full of books and research notes. She was studying what the university called agricultural optimization, learning how to make crops grow better and faster. At 22, she was bright and eager, always asking questions about how things worked. "Father," she said, walking carefully along the raised path between the fields, "I have good news. I've been accepted into the advanced program." Hyunwoo looked up from examining a particularly healthy rice plant. "The off-world program?" "Yes, they say I show promise for the family business." So Young smiled. "I'll be learning from the best teachers in the outer colonies." Hyunwoo nodded, pride evident in his weathered face. His daughter was smart, just like her mother had been. The family business was important work, though most people didn't understand just how important. "That's wonderful, So Young. Your mother would be proud." Far above them, invisible to their eyes, sensors from the hegemony fleet recorded their conversation. The aliens listening found it strange that humans would be so excited about farming, but they assumed it meant the species had indeed become primitive. Back on the command ship, Veltar studied more reports. Human settlements were scattered across Earth, Mars, and a few moons in the outer system. They seemed to live quiet lives, growing food, teaching their children, and pursuing what appeared to be very simple science projects. There were no weapons factories, no military academies, no signs of the warrior culture that had once challenged the entire hegemony. "It's almost sad," commented Kethra. "They used to be so impressive. Now they're just farmers." Veltar wasn't entirely convinced. Something felt wrong about this picture. The humans he had read about in the old reports were not the type to simply give up and retreat into agricultural life. But the evidence was clear. Every scan, every long-range observation, every intercepted communication pointed to the same conclusion. Humanity had become a peaceful, farming civilization with no military capability. The War Council met that evening in the Great Assembly Hall of the flagship. Representatives from 12 different species sat around the circular table, each one eager to discuss the opportunity before them. The Sol system was rich in resources, and now it seemed to be defended by nothing more than farmers and students. "The decision seems obvious," declared General Thakmore, his scaled face showing satisfaction. "We reclaim the system. The humans clearly cannot resist." "What about the old treaty?" asked Ambassador Sillin, always cautious about legal matters. The treaty expires in 30 standard days, Veltar replied. After that, we are free to act as we see fit. And given what we've observed, I see no reason to renew the agreement. The council voted unanimously. The hegemony would reclaim the Sol system and add its resources to their ever-expanding empire. The humans, with their primitive farming communities, would either submit peacefully or be relocated to less valuable worlds. As the meeting ended, Veltar stood once again before the holographic display, looking at images of Earth. Something still bothered him about the whole situation. In all his years of military service, he had learned to trust his instincts, and right now those instincts were telling him that things were not as simple as they appeared. But the evidence was overwhelming. The humans were weak now, focused on growing crops instead of building weapons. They had clearly chosen peace over power, and while Veltar could respect that choice, it also meant they had made themselves vulnerable. On Earth, Hyunwoo finished his evening walk through the fields. The rice was growing well this season, each grain developing exactly as it should. He looked up at the stars, knowing that visitors were coming soon. It had been a long time since anyone had challenged humanity, and he wondered how the newcomers would handle the surprise that was waiting for them. So Young joined him by the edge of the field, following his gaze toward the night sky. The stars are beautiful tonight, Father. Yes, they are, Hyunwoo agreed. And very busy places if you know how to look. Neither of them seemed worried about the massive alien fleet approaching their world. In fact, if someone had been close enough to hear, they might have caught the sound of quiet laughter carried on the evening breeze. The hegemony fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, with a thunderous flash of energy that lit up space for millions of kilometers. 200 massive warships arranged themselves in battle formation, their weapons charged and ready. Supreme Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as Earth appeared on the main screen like a small blue marble in the distance. Open all communication channels, he commanded. Broadcast on every frequency. The communications officer nodded and activated the system. Veltar's voice boomed across space, carried by powerful transmitters that could reach every radio, every satellite, every communication device in the human system. Attention, humans of the Sol system. I am Supreme Commander Veltar of the Hegemony Battle Fleet. The Treaty of Distant Stars has expired. You have 30 standard hours to surrender completely and prepare for occupation. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force. You have been warned. Veltar expected panic. He expected desperate pleas for mercy, or perhaps frantic attempts to contact other alien species for help. He expected fear and confusion from a primitive farming civilization suddenly faced with the most powerful military force in the galaxy. What he got instead was silence for exactly 17 minutes and 32 seconds. Then a cheerful voice crackled over the communication system. Hello there. This is Tae Min, Earth's diplomatic liaison for agricultural affairs. Thank you so much for the advance notice about your visit. That's very polite of you. Veltar blinked all 6 of his eyes. The voice sounded like an elderly human male, speaking in the calm tone someone might use to discuss the weather. However, Tae Min continued, I was wondering if you might consider scheduling your invasion for after harvest season. We're right in the middle of gathering our crops, and it would be terribly inconvenient to interrupt the work right now. Perhaps in 3 months? The weather should be better then, too. The bridge fell silent. Every officer stared at the communication console as if it had just grown a second head. Veltar felt his jaw drop open. Did he just, began Kethra. Ask us to reschedule our invasion? Veltar finished. Yes, I believe he did. The human voice continued. If you need supplies while you wait, we have excellent fruits and vegetables available. Our rice is particularly good this year. Very reasonable prices, too. Veltar shook his head and gestured for the communication to be cut. This was clearly some kind of psychological warfare, designed to confuse and unsettle the attacking force. He had read about human tactics in the old war reports. They were clever, these humans, but he would not be fooled. Launch scout ships, he ordered. I want detailed reconnaissance of every human settlement. Find their hidden military bases and weapons facilities. 6 small, fast ships shot out from the fleet and raced toward the inner system. Their sensors were the most advanced in the galaxy, capable of detecting energy signatures through solid rock or detecting hidden installations on the far side of planets. What they found was exactly what the long-range sensors had shown: farms, schools, small towns and cities where humans went about their daily lives. On Mars, there were research stations studying geology and weather patterns. On the moons of Jupiter, there were mining operations extracting water and minerals, but nothing that looked like weapons production. Most puzzling of all, when the scout ships were detected by human sensors, the response was not alarm or fear. Instead, humans came out of their buildings and waved at the alien craft. Some held up signs offering to sell fresh produce. A few even transmitted recipes for local dishes, suggesting that the alien visitors might enjoy trying human food. "This is impossible," muttered General Tackmore, reviewing the scout reports. "Where are their defenses? Where are their weapons? How can an entire civilization be this peaceful?" On Earth, So Young sat in her university library, video calling her friend Ji-hoon. He was studying at what he called a technical college somewhere in the outer colonies. The connection was crystal clear despite the vast distance between them. "Did you hear about the visitors?" So Young asked, keeping her voice low so she wouldn't disturb other students. Ji-hoon laughed, his face bright with amusement on the screen. "Oh yes, everyone here is talking about it. The betting pools are already started." "Betting pools? On how long it takes them to figure it out," Ji-hoon explained. "My classmates remember the last time this happened, about 800 years ago. The Kralix Dominion tried the same thing. Lasted about 2 days before they got confused and went home." So Young giggled. "What are you betting on?" "I think these ones might last a whole week. They seem a bit slow, but they're persistent. My professor says persistence can be educational for everyone involved." Neither of them spoke as if an alien invasion was anything to worry about. They discussed it the way students might talk about an interesting science experiment or an unusual weather pattern. Back on the command ship, Veltar was growing frustrated. Every report from his scouts showed the same thing. Humans living ordinary lives, completely unconcerned about the massive military fleet that had just announced its intention to conquer them. Either they were all insane or they were hiding something. "Perhaps they've forgotten how to fight," suggested Kethra. 3,000 years is a long time. Maybe they really have become nothing but farmers." "No," Veltar said firmly. "No species forgets war completely. They must have hidden defenses, secret weapons, something we're not seeing." He ordered more detailed scans, focusing on underground installations, orbital platforms that might be cloaked, anything that could explain human confidence in the face of overwhelming odds. The scans found nothing. Even more strangely, human communications networks were buzzing with activity, but not the kind of activity you would expect from a planet under threat. Instead of emergency broadcasts or military mobilization orders, the networks carried discussions about farming techniques, school schedules, and something called gravitational field manipulation theory that seemed to be a popular subject in human educational institutions. Timon's voice came over the communication system again. "Commander Veltar? I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. We've been thinking about your request for surrender, and we're a bit confused about what exactly you'd like us to surrender. Could you be more specific?" Veltar activated his microphone with perhaps more force than necessary. "Your planet, your system, everything." "Oh, I see," Tamon replied, sounding genuinely puzzled. "But we're just farmers and teachers. We don't really have anything military to surrender. Would you like our surplus grain production reports instead?" The sound that came from Veltar's throat was somewhere between a growl and a sigh. Around him, his officers were beginning to look as confused as he felt. On her asteroid research station, Yunji monitored the alien fleet with mild interest. Her job was to study space debris patterns and help coordinate mining operations, but the sudden appearance of 200 warships was definitely unusual enough to merit attention. She opened a communication channel to the alien fleet. "Hello, visitors. I'm Yunji from Research Station 7. I couldn't help but notice you seem to be having some technical difficulties with your ship formations. Are your navigation systems working properly? I'd be happy to send a repair crew if you need help." Veltar stared at the communication console. A human was offering to help repair his warships during an invasion, while surrounded by the most powerful military force in known space. For the first time in his long military career, Supreme Commander Veltar began to wonder if he was missing something very important. Veltar had reached the limit of his patience. For 3 days, his massive fleet had sat at the edge of the Sol system, receiving nothing but polite confusion from the humans and helpful offers to sell them vegetables. It was time to end this strange situation and show these peaceful farmers what real military power looked like. All ships, advance to Earth, he commanded. Maximum speed. Battle formation. Prepare for planetary bombardment. The fleet moved forward like a massive steel wave, 200 warships accelerating toward the inner system. Their engines burned bright against the darkness of space, and their weapon systems hummed with deadly energy. This was the kind of force that had conquered 1,000 worlds, and no farming planet could stand against it. But as they crossed the orbit of Neptune, something unusual began to happen. "Commander," called the navigation officer, "we're receiving traffic control instructions." "What?" A calm human voice came over the communication system. "Good morning, incoming vessels. This is Minho, System Traffic Coordinator. Welcome to Sol System. For safety reasons, please reduce speed to 200,000 kilometers per hour and maintain spacing of 50,000 kilometers between ships. Please follow the highlighted flight path to avoid congested areas." Veltar's mandibles clicked in annoyance. "Ignore those instructions. Continue at maximum speed." But something strange was happening to his ships. Despite his orders, despite the pilots pushing their engines to full power, the fleet began to slow down. Not dramatically and not in a way that felt like an attack. It was more like space itself was gently but firmly encouraging them to follow the recommended speed limit. "Engineering report," Veltar snapped. "Sir, our engines are functioning normally, but we cannot exceed the recommended velocity. It's as if something is creating additional drag, but our sensors detect nothing." The fleet continued forward, now moving at exactly the speed Minho had suggested. Their formation, which had been an aggressive attack pattern, somehow shifted into neat, orderly lines that followed invisible traffic lanes through space. "Weapons status," Veltar demanded. "Sir, weapons are charged and ready, but our targeting systems are experiencing intermittent failures. Every time we lock onto a target, the system resets itself." General Thakmor studied his tactical display with growing confusion. "It's like space itself is correcting our behavior." From her small research station on an asteroid near Mars, Yunji watched the alien fleet's approach with genuine concern. She had been monitoring their progress and noticed several ships struggling with what appeared to be mechanical problems. She opened a communication channel. "Alien fleet, this is Yunji again. I'm seeing some irregularities in your ship movements. Are you having trouble with your guidance systems? I really think I should send a repair team to help you out." Veltar's response came through clenched teeth. "We do not need repairs. We demand you surrender this system immediately." "Surrender what exactly?" Yunji asked, sounding genuinely puzzled. "My asteroid farming operation? I mean, I suppose you could have it, but it's not very interesting. We just grow crystals here for export." "Crystals? Oh yes, we're very proud of our crystal gardens. Would you like to see some samples? We have some beautiful formations this season." Before Veltar could respond, his tactical officer called out in alarm. "Sir, 3 ships report complete navigation failure. They're stuck following a flight path they cannot deviate from." On the main screen, Veltar watched in disbelief as 3 of his most advanced battlecruisers moved in perfect formation along what appeared to be an invisible highway through space. When their captains tried to break formation, their ship simply wouldn't respond to commands. Minho's voice came over the communication system again. "Sorry about that, folks. You were drifting into a restricted shipping lane. Heavy cargo traffic in that area. I've redirected you to a safer route. Should clear up in a few hours." "Shipping lane?" Veltar repeated weakly. "Oh yes, we have quite a lot of commercial traffic through the system. Wouldn't want any accidents. Your ships are much smaller than our usual cargo vessels, so please be careful out there." The fleet continued its forced march toward Earth, unable to deviate from the polite but firm traffic control that seemed to govern all movement in the Sol system. Weapons continued to malfunction whenever they tried to target anything. Navigation systems refused to follow orders that would take them outside the designated flight paths. On Earth, So-Young finished her final project for her gravitational physics class. It was a small device, no larger than a smartphone, that could manipulate gravitational fields in a localized area. The math had been tricky, but she was proud of the elegant solution she had found. "Excellent work," said her professor Dong-Hyun, examining the device. "Very clean field manipulation. This should keep space debris away from farming colonies quite effectively." "It's just freshman-level work," So-Young said modestly. "Perhaps, but it shows good practical thinking." The applications for traffic management alone are quite impressive. Neither of them mentioned that So Young's freshman project was currently being used by Minho to gently redirect the most powerful invasion fleet in galactic history. Meanwhile, at his technical college built inside a constructed planet in the outer system, Ji-hoon and his classmates were having the time of their lives. Their assignment for the week had been to design non-lethal methods for managing space, traffic violations, and the alien fleet had become their practical exam. "I like the gravitational redirect system," said his classmate Ye-jin, monitoring the alien fleet's progress. "Very subtle. The weapon system interference is clever too," added Min-soo. "Whoever designed that response protocol has a good sense of humor." Their professor nodded approvingly. "Remember, the goal is education, not humiliation. These visitors clearly don't understand our traffic laws, so we help them learn, gently." The alien fleet, now reduced to following human traffic control like confused tourists, finally reached Earth's orbit. Veltar stared at the blue-green planet below, trying to understand what had happened to his powerful invasion force. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "we're receiving a personal invitation." "From who?" "Taemin, the diplomatic liaison. He's inviting you to visit Earth personally to discuss your concerns. He says he can clear up any misunderstandings." Veltar looked around his bridge at officers who were as confused as he was. His weapons didn't work properly. His ships wouldn't obey his commands. His invasion had been turned into a politely guided tour of the Sol system, and somewhere in the back of his mind, a terrible suspicion was beginning to form. What if the humans weren't primitive farmers at all? What if they were something else entirely? Something so advanced that his invasion looked like nothing more than a minor traffic problem. Yoonji's voice came over the communication system one more time. "I'm still seeing some system irregularities on your ships. Are you sure you don't want me to send a repair crew? My cousin Hyun-soo is excellent with mechanical problems." Veltar closed all 6 of his eyes and tried very hard not to think about what kind of mechanical problems a human repair crew might find on his ships, or what they might suggest as solutions. For the first time in his long military career, Supreme Commander Veltar was beginning to suspect that he might be in way over his head. On Earth, So Young submitted her final project report to the university's automated grading system. The small device she had built hummed quietly on her desk, its gravitational field generators creating tiny ripples in space-time that were invisible to the naked eye but powerful enough to deflect objects weighing several tons. Her professor, Dong-hyun, reviewed the work with satisfaction. "Excellent practical application, So Young. Your solution for managing space debris around farming colonies is both elegant and efficient. The field equations are particularly well balanced." "Thank you, Professor. I was worried the power requirements might be too high." Dong-hyun shook his head. "Not at all. This is good freshman-level engineering. It shows you understand the basics of gravitational manipulation. With some refinement, this could easily handle larger objects." What neither of them mentioned directly was that So Young's freshman project was currently part of the system, keeping 200 alien warships locked into safe traffic patterns around Earth. To them, it was simply a practical application of basic physics principles that any first-year student should be able to master. Meanwhile, at his technical college in the outer system, Ji-hoon was putting the finishing touches on his own assignment. The project had been to design humane methods for redirecting space traffic that doesn't follow proper safety protocols. His solution involved a network of field generators that could gently override ship control systems without causing harm to the occupants. "How are the test subjects responding?" asked his professor, reviewing Ji-hoon's data. "Very well," Ji-hoon replied, watching displays that showed the alien fleet's movements. "They seem confused but unharmed. The redirect protocols are working exactly as designed. No damage to their ships, no injuries to crew members, just gentle guidance toward safer flight paths." "Good. Remember, the goal is always education. These visitors clearly don't understand our traffic management systems, so we help them learn." Ji-hoon nodded. His classmates had been taking bets on how long it would take the aliens to figure out what was happening. But Ji-hoon found himself hoping they would learn something useful from the experience. After all, that was the point of any good educational exercise. On the command deck of his flagship, Veltar was reviewing damage reports and trying to understand what was happening to his fleet. The reports made no sense. His ships were functioning perfectly according to every diagnostic test they ran. Engines worked fine. Weapons worked fine. Navigation systems worked fine. But somehow none of them would do what he actually wanted them to do. "Sir," called his communications officer, "we're receiving another personal message from the human diplomatic liaison." "Put it through," Veltar said wearily. Taemin's cheerful voice filled the bridge. "Commander Veltar, I hope you're enjoying your visit to our system. I was wondering if you might like to meet in person to discuss any concerns you might have. I could visit your ship if that would be convenient." "That's impossible," Veltar replied. "We're in orbit around your planet. How could you possibly reach us?" "Oh, the usual way," Taemin said casually. "I'll be right there." Before Veltar could ask what the usual way meant, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Not danger alarms, just the gentle chimes that indicated an unscheduled arrival in the main docking bay. "Sir," called the security chief, "someone has just materialized in docking bay 3. "Materialized?" "Yes, sir. No ship, no transport beam, no dimensional rift. One moment the bay was empty. The next moment there was a human standing there. He's asking permission to come aboard." Veltar stared at his security displays. On the screen, he could see an elderly human male wearing simple clothes and carrying what appeared to be a basket of fruit. The man waved pleasantly at the security camera. "Let him come to the bridge," Veltar said quietly, "but maintain full security protocols." A few minutes later, Taemin walked onto the command deck as if he were visiting old friends. He looked around with interest, nodding appreciatively at the advanced technology, then smiled warmly at Veltar. "What a beautiful ship," he said genuinely. "The engineering is quite impressive. Though I noticed you've been having some technical difficulties. Perhaps I can help explain what's been happening." Veltar studied the human carefully. Taemin looked exactly like what he claimed to be. An elderly man, probably in his 70s, with kind eyes and the comfortable manner of someone who spent his time tending gardens and teaching children. But he had somehow traveled from the planet's surface to a ship in high orbit without using any visible form of transportation. "How did you get here?" Veltar asked. "Oh, the usual way," Taemin repeated as if that explained anything. "Space manipulation is quite basic, really. Any child learns it in school. Much more efficient than ships for short distances." "Space manipulation?" Taemin looked puzzled by the question. "Well, yes. How else would you travel? Though I suppose if you don't know the techniques, ships would be necessary. Rather like walking instead of running, isn't it?" He set his fruit basket on a nearby console and pulled out what looked like a simple apple. "Here, let me show you something interesting." Taemin held the apple up and it began to glow with a soft, warm light. Not the harsh glow of technology, but something that looked almost alive. As Veltar watched, the apple seemed to contain entire galaxies, swirling patterns of light that showed star systems and planets in incredible detail. "This is our local cluster," Taemin explained conversationally, "about 50,000 light-years across. We like to keep track of the neighborhood, you know, make sure everything stays stable and peaceful." The apple showed not just stars and planets, but the movements of ships, the flow of energy between systems, the delicate balance of gravitational forces that kept everything in its proper place. And throughout it all, Veltar could see subtle signs of management, gentle adjustments that prevented collisions, optimized travel routes, and maintained the cosmic order. "You're monitoring the entire galactic region," Veltar whispered. "Oh, much more than monitoring," Taemin said cheerfully. "We're gardening. Just like growing rice or vegetables, but on a slightly larger scale. We make sure systems stay healthy, help species develop safely, prevent wars and disasters when we can. It's all part of the family business." The terrible understanding began to dawn on Veltar. The primitive farming civilization, the simple educational institutions, the casual way humans spoke about advanced physics as if it were elementary knowledge. "You never became primitive," he said slowly. "You became something else entirely." Taemin nodded approvingly. "Now you're beginning to understand. 3,000 years is a long time, Commander. Long enough to solve most of the basic problems that species worry about. Energy, matter, space, time. Once you understand how those work, everything else becomes much simpler." He gestured toward the apple, which still showed the swirling patterns of managed space. "Your people are still thinking in terms of conquest and resources. But when you can create any resource you need, when you can travel anywhere instantly, When you can manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level, well, conquest becomes rather pointless, doesn't it? Veltar looked around his bridge at technology that had once seemed incredibly advanced. Compared to what Taimin was casually demonstrating, his most powerful warship was like a stone knife next to a precision instrument. Then why? He asked quietly. Didn't you just destroy our fleet when we arrived? Taimin looked genuinely surprised by the question. Destroy you? Why would we do that? You're not threatening anything important, and violence is such an inefficient way to solve problems. Besides, he added with a gentle smile, we thought you might enjoy learning something new. Taimin smiled at Veltar's shocked expression and gestured toward the main view screen. Would you like to see what humanity has actually been doing for the past 3,000 years? I think it might help explain why we weren't very worried about your visit. Without waiting for an answer, Taimin touched the apple he still held, and the view screen came alive with images that made Veltar's mind reel. They were looking at Earth, but not the Earth his sensors had shown him. This was Earth as it really was. The rice fields where Hyunwoo walked were not just farms. Each grain of rice was a sophisticated piece of nanotechnology, capable of converting raw matter into any needed resource. The farming was actually large-scale matter conversion that could produce anything from basic materials to complex machinery, all while maintaining the appearance and function of a traditional agricultural system. Hyunwoo is one of our best terraforming specialists, Tae-min explained. He's been working on a project to stabilize the weather patterns on 17 different worlds. Takes a lot of patience and skill to get the atmospheric balance just right. The view shifted to So Young's university, where students worked on what looked like simple science projects. But the reality was staggering. One student was designing new forms of matter that existed in 11 dimensions. Another was working out the mathematics for safely moving entire star systems. So Young's freshman project was a gravitational manipulation device that could redirect objects the size of moons. Education is very important to us, Tae-min said. We believe every child should understand the basic principles of reality. Quantum mechanics, space-time manipulation, matter conversion, consciousness integration. You know, the fundamentals. Veltar watched a human child no more than 10 years old, casually assembling what appeared to be a miniature black hole for a school science project. The child was carefully adjusting its event horizon while explaining to classmates how to use contained singularities for efficient waste disposal. That's Woo Jin, Tae-min said fondly. Bright boy. His project this week is building a small universe in a bottle. Nothing fancy. Just a few million stars and some planets where his pet fish can evolve. His teacher says he shows real promise for advanced physics. The tour continued, each revelation more mind-bending than the last. Minho's Traffic Control Center was revealed as a facility that didn't just manage spacecraft, but controlled the movement of entire star systems to optimize resource distribution and prevent cosmic disasters. His casual redirection of the alien fleet was like a highway worker directing traffic around a minor construction. Project Yunji's asteroid farming operation was actually a facility that converted raw matter directly into any needed resources. When she had offered to send a repair crew, she was being completely serious. Her repair crew could have rebuilt the entire alien fleet using better materials and more efficient designs, probably during their lunch break. The mining operation on Europa, Tae-min continued, is actually where we manufacture replacement suns for star systems that are running low on energy. Nothing too fancy, just basic stellar engineering. We try to keep them running at optimal efficiency for the sake of any life that might develop. Veltar felt his understanding of the universe crumbling and rebuilding itself with each new revelation. How long have you been able to do these things? Oh, we started with the basics about 2,000 years ago, Tae-min said thoughtfully. Took us a few centuries to work out the details of matter manipulation and energy conversion. Space and time were trickier. Took maybe 500 years to get those right. The real breakthrough was consciousness integration, learning how to think with the universe instead of just in it. That opened up all sorts of possibilities. On the screen, the view expanded to show not just Earth, but the entire Sol system. What Veltar had thought was a quiet backwater was actually the control center for a network of managed systems that stretched across half the galaxy. Invisible to conventional sensors, human installations maintained cosmic stability, guided the development of younger species, and quietly prevented the kind of large-scale disasters that had once threatened entire civilizations. The Treaty of Distant Stars was never about keeping us contained, Taman explained. It was about giving other species time to develop naturally, without interference from us. We learned early on that when a young civilization encounters something too far beyond their understanding, it can cause problems. Better to let everyone grow at their own pace. But the war, Veltar said weakly. 3,000 years ago you fought us. Your technology was advanced, but not this, Taman nodded. We were still learning then, still thinking in terms of conflict and competition. The war taught us something important, that violence is terribly inefficient. Why destroy or conquer when you can create and teach? Why take resources from others when you can make your own? Why fight over territory when you can build new worlds? The implications hit Veltar like a physical blow. You could have destroyed us at any time. The hegemony, the other empires, all of us. We're nothing compared to this. Destroy you? Why would we want to do that? Taman looked genuinely puzzled. You're part of the galaxy's diversity. Every species has something unique to offer. The hegemony's organizational skills are quite impressive, actually. Given time and the right opportunities, you could develop into something wonderful. The view screen showed more images. Human teachers working with young aliens of a dozen different species, helping them understand advanced concepts at their own pace. Research facilities where humans and aliens collaborated on projects that benefited everyone. Worlds where struggling civilizations had been quietly helped through disasters or resource shortages, never knowing that their salvation had come from the species they considered primitive farmers. This is what we've been doing, Taman said simply. Learning, growing, and helping others do the same. It's much more rewarding than conquest. Veltar stared at the images, trying to process what he was seeing. What happens now? To my fleet, to the hegemony? Well, that's up to you, Taman replied. You came here looking for conquest, but I think you found something much more valuable. Knowledge. The question is, what will you do with it? He gestured toward the fruit basket he had brought. I have a proposal. Instead of conquest or surrender, why not partnership? The hegemony has skills we admire. Organization, logistics, the ability to bring different species together for common goals. We could teach you some of what we've learned, and you could help us with projects that require your particular talents. You would share this technology with us? Some of it gradually as you're ready to use it responsibly. We've learned that wisdom is more important than power, but with patience and the right guidance, your people could advance far beyond where you are now. On the screen, the view shifted to show So Young preparing for her graduation. She had been selected for a special program to serve as humanity's first official ambassador to the hegemony, helping them transition from a conquest-based civilization to something more sustainable and fulfilling. My daughter is very excited about this assignment, Taman said proudly. She's always been interested in cross-cultural education. She thinks the hegemony has great potential for growth. Veltar watched the young human woman reviewing star charts and cultural databases, preparing to help transform the greatest military power in known space into something entirely new. The irony was not lost on him. The invasion fleet that had come to conquer Earth would return home carrying teachers instead of prisoners, knowledge instead of plunder. Commander, Taman said gently, your people have spent centuries building an empire based on strength and conquest. But imagine what you could build based on wisdom and cooperation. Imagine what the galaxy could become if all species worked together instead of fighting each other. The elderly human gathered up his fruit basket and prepared to leave. Think about it. Discuss it with your leaders. We're in no hurry, and neither should you be. The best decisions are made with patience and careful thought. As Taman walked toward the exit, he paused and looked back at Veltar. Oh, and Commander, welcome to the neighborhood. We're glad you finally came to visit. After the human disappeared the same way he had arrived, Veltar stood alone on his bridge, surrounded by officers who looked as stunned as he felt. Outside the viewports, Earth continued its quiet rotation, looking like nothing more than a peaceful farming world. But now he knew the truth. Humanity had not become weak over 3,000 years. They had become something beyond strength, beyond conquest, beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. They had become gardeners of reality itself, quietly tending to the cosmos while other species fought over scraps. The question now was whether the hegemony was wise enough to accept the gift they were being offered. The chance to grow beyond what they had ever imagined possible. Veltar looked around at his officers and made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. "Prepare a message for home," he said quietly. "We're going to need to have a very long conversation with the High Command."